What would you recommend as an under $99 portable headphone that is at least mildly stylish and low profile? Okay, oh, sorry, you must be able to hear that music. Let me just turn that down for a second. Let's turn that down. Okay, this is an easy recommendation. Let's just head over to, uh, let's just head over to, let's just head over to Amazon and check what the latest price for the ES700 is. Because the ES700, the Audio-Technica ES700, okay, so it's a bit over $100. This would be my top recommendation if you wanted something that was near $100, that was mildly stylish and low profile. The ES700 is everything like that. That is, and is a fantastic sounding headphone. Like, oh god, I did that Inception thing again. Let me turn that off. Oh god, it weirds me out whenever I see that. Yeah, that is my general recommendation for about $99 portable headphone. That's low profile. I would otherwise maybe recommend the UE6000. The black color is a little bulky though, so I wouldn't necessarily describe it as low profile. Just thinking off the top of my head. I can't necessarily recommend anything. I mean, you could go for the JVC HAS500, and that is decently low profile, and it is a bassy sounding headphone if you're after that, but it isn't the most comfortable one. So that's an option. Sorry if I couldn't help you a bit more there. I don't generally get enough gear under $99. I think that is a weakness of what I'm doing. I really should buy some more cheaper gear. The thing is that I don't like buying, the one reason why I don't like buying cheaper gear is that I buy it and then I review it, and then it's obviously for under $100, it's never going to be good as some of the other gear I have. So I buy it, I listen to it, and then I have no further use for it, and it just sits around in my house as clutter. And you know, it's not exactly the best feeling in the world. But in the future, I might see if I can get some cheaper gear and have a listen. Next question is, I've had these Sony XBA4s for a time now, and I've been listening to them on my Walkman A series because it seems to sound the best. I suppose the output impedance is better on that device than any others I have. Any suggestions on a good playback device? Well, I kind of resisted saying that having a lower output impedance necessarily means that you'll get a better sound out of the XBA4, because from memory the A series of Walkmans and generally the Sony Walkmans do not have a zero output impedance or near zero. They do generally have a higher output impedance. And some people would prefer that, because the thing is with the XBA4 and the XBA40, the bass response is so overwhelming for some people that they would actually prefer to tone down the bass. I never had any problems listening to the XBA4 on my iPhone 5 when I had that, and that has an output impedance of about 3 ohms, so it would have tweaked down the bass just a little on the XBA4. And honestly, when I put it into my Objective 2 amplifier, which had a very near zero output impedance, I would find that it would actually, perhaps placebo, but I would find it would get a little too bassy. So if you're happy with the playback device that you have now, just keep using it. I'm not a big proponent of spending heaps and heaps of money on digital different playback devices, because in the end, if it sounds good, you're not going to get that much difference between various audio playback devices. I don't have like one of those $1,000 audiophile players. I generally don't really trust that kind of price range for a audiophile music player. But my general suspicion is that the amount of differences in sound are going to be mostly down to placebo or bias. I've never really seen anyone do proper controlled tests between different audio players, and as such, I have trouble taking opinions when people listen to $1,000 audio players. And I have trouble taking that seriously. Headphones are very easy to tell the difference between, like, headphones sound very different, like, and you'd expect them to sound very different because they're they're completely designed differently. They have different acoustic properties. They have different shapes, etc., etc. But for sound players, when the people who actually work on the electronics, when the engineers tell you there's actually not that much difference between all these different op amps and that kind of thing, I tend to believe the engineers rather than the marketers. So that's kind of my opinion on that matter. John asks, again with the scary mustache baby, "Hi Lachlan, great channel. What are your thoughts on the Ultimate Ear UE900S? I want in-ears with mic. I want in-ears with mic transport controls for phone plus replaceable cables. My dilemma is the new UE900S appears to be improvements, but it has half the warranty. Thoughts or alternatives?" This is actually a really interesting question because I posted about the UE900S a few days ago on my Facebook page, and I've only recently found out about it. I quite like the sound of the UE900, but I was really, really put off by those build quality issues. And it does worry me. I mean, there are some improvements in the way that they designed the UE900S. So apparently with the UE900S, instead of having the balanced armatures glued into the capsule, what they have is that they have a bracket inside made of plastic. The balance armatures are stuck in that, and that bracket is attached to the earpieces. And now the earpieces, instead of being glued together, they have been apparently a sonic weld is what they call it. They've just managed to weld them together. So a lot of people with the original UE900s would have a problem where they would just fall apart. That should have been corrected on the new UE900S. But yeah, halving the warranty is a little disappointing on their part because it suggests a lack of confidence in the new product. I'm afraid I can't really look. It's frustrating because even with the original UE900, when it had the 2-year warranty, sometimes, and I saw this in the HeadVibe thread, people would not be able to convince customer support to actually replace the headphone when it just fell apart because it was considered user breakage as opposed to any warranty issue. So even with the warranty period, the Logitech customer support was patchy at best. In Australia, it's a little different because these products would actually have statutory warranty. So what we have is a protection where warranty periods are not by law defined by time, even though the manufacturer can put whatever they want on the box. The warranty period is considered what is reasonable in Australia. And so there would be an argument to be made that if you bought a $400 earphone, it would not be reasonable for the earphone to fall apart in 1 year's time. So in Australia, it's basically possible to get warranty remedy and sometimes replacement, which is what I got for the UE900 replacement through the retail store itself as opposed to the company that manufactures them. So I don't know how it works in the America or internationally. My thoughts on the matter is that I would kind of sit tight unless you're in a really big rush. See how the early reviews come in for the UE900. See if it feels any more solid to the initial reviews. I definitely am very interested in getting my hands on a pair, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get them for the same amazing price that I got the UE900 for. So I hope that gives you some thoughts on the matter. So John asks, are there any IEMs that are incredible for soundstage and positioning that you could recommend? Well, obviously there is only one IEM that I would recommend for incredible soundstaging, and that's this. This is one of basically 2 IEMs that I brought with me to this new place because I didn't want to. This is the Sony 7550, basically, and the EX1000, of course. That's the kind of more expensive brother of the 7550. The whole point of this design with the vertically mounted driver is it sounds very spacious, and there's no earphone that I've tried which has as wide a soundstage as this. It basically sounds almost, not quite, but almost like you're listening to speakers. The one problem with the 7550 is that for the EX1000, the high-frequency treble can be a little much for some people. The 7550 has it toned down to a degree, but then for some people it loses a little bit of that sparkle. This is one of my favorite in-ear earphones, though it is completely not practical for portable use. You can really forget about using these outside because they will just let sound in like crazy. They do not isolate at all. Next question is, can you recommend, from Wayuden, can you recommend sites that are great in buying headphones for international countries? So there's soundearphones.com, I believe. That's a pretty good one. It ships out from the US. There's Lend Me Your Ears, so that's spelled with a U-R instead of Y-O-U-R, so it's Lend Me Your Ears, based in Singapore, I believe. They, I think, ship out internationally, and I bought my GR07s off them, and that was pretty good. There's that other one, I forgot the name of it. There's a big, based in the US. But of course, I mean, the other great way you can buy headphones is, of course, buying them from Headfi and the for sale and for trade forums, because that always works out quite well. But yeah, no, I'm always buying random headphones. A lot of times I even buy them from, for instance, I get some stuff from Amazon Japan. You have that Tensor forwarded to you. If you want something from Amazon in the US, you can get that forwarded to you. There's all sorts of ways to get what you want. In Australia, I've been finding that the prices have been getting a bit better over time. So it's a little bit easier to get something close to American pricing. So William's question is, hi, I just want to ask something. Right now I'm using the Takstar Pro 80 plus FiiO E7K. So I'm E7, is that EO7K? So that's different from the E7, I'm assuming, but I'm not sure. But I feel the output quality of my music still the same when I plug in my headphones straight to my PC. It's because the quality of my file, most of my music is 320 kilobits per second. No, it's not because of your file. Your file is perfectly fine. There's going to be, I mean, it depends on the music that you're listening to. Some albums have not been mastered that well, and perhaps you wouldn't be able to hear the quality differences. But the bit rate you're using the files at, if it was MP3 at 320 or AAC at about 256, it shouldn't really be that much of a big factor. Basically, it sounds like you have a good PC output. This is why I don't review amplifiers and I don't review portable players and everything like that, because I've never been able to sufficiently convince myself personally that when I hear a difference between two different sources, it's because I am actually hearing a difference and not because I'm just making something up in my brain. Like I honestly cannot say that with any sort of confidence, and because I can't say that with confidence, I don't feel right making videos about it. So my general opinion is that not that the entire industry is snake oil, though a lot of it is, but a lot of the differences that people talk about I think are much less than what they actually say. I doubt many of the situations where people listen to higher end equipment, they listen to it in conditions where they would even be able to hear the difference because it's far too noisy or for whatever other reason, that sort of thing. I hope that helps. Zach asks, I would like to know your opinion about in-ear tips. After your recommendation, I bought the Sony XBA C10. They were fine with silicon tips, but after I went with foam, they are so much better in lower register. So basically, with any earphone, what you want is you want to find the tips that are just going to get the seal as much as possible. When I generally use foam ear tips, I found that they warm up the sound quite a bit. So I don't know. Everyone's ears are different. You just choose the tips that work really well. I find that the Sony silicon tips are the best for my ears. I've always really liked them, and because they have they have color coding for each size, I can be very sure when I try an earphone that if I use a green Sony silicon tip, I am going to have the right size. But a lot of people have tried all sorts of different kind of ear tips to different effect. Your mileage really may vary. For the C10, it has a fairly big nozzle. I'm surprised a foam tip could actually work, because I thought that it would be extra wide, so perhaps you have extra wide ear canals. It's hard to say. Joel asks, on portable devices, do you use stock music player or do you use third-party, i.e. Neutron, Power Amp, etc.? I personally use Neutron on my HTC One, no boom sound, my Momentums, and I think it sounds quite nice, but I might be subjected to the placebo effect. You are being subjected to the placebo effect. You cannot escape the placebo effect. That's the whole thing, right? You just can't. There's no way. Humans are very fallible creatures. We make assumptions and we jump to conclusions based on very little evidence. That's why the entire field of statistics and blind controlled studies were introduced. I'm not saying that there's no difference in sound, but you are absolutely in some way being biased. And as soon as anyone claims that they aren't being biased, you should stop trusting their opinion, because that's, everyone is human, and unless you're talking to some sort of psychopath, like everyone has foibles, and I'm first among them to say that I am very influenced by all kinds of biases, which is why I try to listen to things over a long period of time. No, I don't use any third-party music players. I just use whatever's. I just use the music app on my iPhone, and I do that because it's integrated with the rest of the applications. I have an iMac, an Apple TV back at my old place. Everything works together, and I'm very happy with the music application. In the end, I'm not looking for the absolute best sound quality from the iPhone, because when I listen to this, I'm listening to it when I go outside on the street. So what gives? Like, what am I going to hear differently when I'm on the train or the bus when there's a bloody train or a bus going past? So that's my opinion. It's pretty much my opinion whenever it comes to this kind of subject is I don't think it makes much of a difference. That's my sort of opinion. Kenneth asks, which would you say is your favorite portable on-the-go headphone and media player currently? Well, it's certainly not this headphone. No, well, that remains to be seen. Maybe it'll be really good. No, my favorite portable is the Sennheiser Ampere. So I still actually haven't made the review video for this, but I had such a great experience with the HD25. I bought the Sennheiser Ampere. This is discontinued now, but I bought it for $160, and $160 is amazing for a headphone of this quality. And I think that was almost like a pricing mistake, because I managed to get it at that price and I've never seen it at that price again. $160, this is all aluminium design. I really like this headphone for a number of reasons. One of them, and I think I've talked about this in a Hangout before, one of them is just because it's so durable that, like, it's meant to be thrown around, right? It's meant to be thrown around. It's designed for professional use. So I can chuck this into a bag and not have to worry about necessarily bringing around a case or anything like that. So I can feel really confident about it that way, and that is really valuable for a portable headphone. The other reason why I love the sorry, cable is on the right side. The other reason why I love the HD25 and the Ampere is because it has such a stable fit. Like, it has a fairly strong clamping force on the ears, but over time I've realized that's not actually that painful. And as an on-ear headphone, because I wear glasses, this is actually a bit better than some around-ear headphones because they don't seal properly when I have glasses on. So on-ear headphones, I found that they do tend to seal a bit better. There's the split headband at the top, which means that I can adjust it and I get a really stable kind of fit with it, so it always feels secure when I'm moving around. And the sound quality is fantastic, I think. Like, it's not exactly the most spacious sounding headphone. It has a really sort of intimate sound to it because of how aggressive and forward some of the lower treble is and some of the bass. But I just think as an all-round kind of headphone, especially for noisy environments, because of the noise isolation, it's really good. Now, one thing is, unfortunately, recently, the cable on my Ampere, the stock cable, this is a cable from Jay's VJs, but the stock cable on my Ampere started shorting out, so I've had to replace the stock cable. There's a modular cable attachment, so I might see how that warranty service goes, and I'll report back on that. Apart from that, though, it's always been quite a durable headphone. So yeah, no, this is my favorite portable headphone. As for my media player, I just use my iPhone. That's it. This is the iPhone 5S. I've gone into a cycle now. I've decided to go into a cycle of upgrading the phone every 1 year, because if I upgrade it every year and I buy them outright, and I'm buying them outright because I have an amazing phone plan for Australian standards, I buy them outright, I can sell this phone on eBay, I can recover some of the costs, and I can keep rolling on. If I keep this phone for longer than a year, it's going to be in such crappy condition by 2 years' time that I'm not going to be able to sell it on eBay, because I don't necessarily take the best care with my gear. I'm not that kind of person. Like I believe that the things I buy are for me to use and not the other way around. Like I'm not going to be beholden to, always babysitting my stuff, which is why I absolutely love the Amperia so much, because I don't feel like I necessarily have to baby it. Sean, who is a Doge, says, not a question, but nice place, thank you. It is very tiny, but it is student housing and settling in, living by myself, so it's been quite nice that way. So that hasn't been too bad. What are your top 3 favorite albums to listen to right now? Okay, so the first album that I've been listening to recently, I actually have the CD, and I just played that when we were just playing, is Run Rabbit Run. So that's been great. I love string quartets, so this has been a fantastic album. It's the original album from Sufjan Stevens was very erratic, so it had some really cool musical ideas, but it felt almost like and some people commented this, but it felt like Sufjan Stevens suddenly discovered how to use electronic loops, so he just made this crazy album that was all kind of all over the place. Whereas having it simplified to a string quartet, it takes some of the really beautiful melodic ideas in that album, and it's just a really awesome album. Like I bought it for $10 at JB Hi-Fi. Like I didn't expect to find it. It was a random purchase, but I was really happy. The other album that I've been listening to is actually I've been playing Starbound, and I can just let's see if this works. I wanted to see if this works. I'll just turn up the music. I don't know if you can hear that, but I've been playing the early access beta of this game, and the sound, the soundtrack has just been incredible. Like it's a lot of piano kind of stuff, but it's just been just a really beautiful, relaxing soundtrack, and it's so different from like your standard kind of FTL or kind of sci-fi soundtracks where it's always sci-fi sounding. This is more just peaceful piano kind of stuff, and I've been really enjoying listening to this, and so I did get the DLC with the album. That's been really cool. Let's turn off the screen share. So Starbound, that's been really cool, and I'll turn that down. My third favorite album right now, what am I can't actually name off the top of my head. Well, the third favorite album that I listened to recently was Into the Wild by Eddie Vedder. The soundtrack from Into the Wild, but it was produced for that movie. It's not just random stuff, and it is a beautiful kind of really melancholy acoustic guitar kind of tracks. Absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed that album. I listened to it when I went camping with some friends, and they had it on their little Jawbone jam box playing it, and every single time there was this one track that always came up, and I would always go, what track is that? Like, because I hadn't been familiar with it, right? So each time I heard it, I thought, oh, this is amazing. Like, I want to know what that is. And the track that I was speaking of particularly is called Long Nights, and it's in the Into the Wild soundtrack. So if you can just type that on YouTube now and have a listen to it, Long Nights by Eddie Vedder, Into the Wild, that is a fantastic track. Next question, and it's about 50 minutes now since I started, so I might wrap this up in about 10 minutes. So my wife wants to buy me really good in-ear earphones, IEMs. I need to select that question. John asked, my wife wants to buy me really good IEMs. They need to sound excellent, mainly electronica and made to last. I'm sick of $200 New Zealand ones breaking after 6 months. Budget of around AU 450. What do you reckon? I feel if there's one group of people that I feel sympathy for, it's for the New Zealanders, because as much as we Australians get gouged on price, when I look at New Zealand prices, it makes me gag, because it's just holy. Like I heard recently that in New Zealand the Sennheiser HD201, which is about $28 or something, here in Australia it costs like $99 in a store, which is just insane. I mean, that's a cheap Sennheiser headphone. If you aren't afraid of buying overseas and you had $450 to spend and they had to be made to last, I'm assuming that you want to use them outside. Correct me if I'm wrong. They need to be made to last. I personally don't own any earphones of that cost that I would necessarily be super encouraged about the long-term durability. I think if you don't need something that has isolation, the Sony 7550 is a good choice. If you want something that will sound really good with electronica, even though it's not $450, the VSonic GR07 has really good build quality, and it has now developed a reputation for that. Like, I think over time, no one has really complained about the build quality of that headphone. So if you want to spend more money, you can always spend more money, but I hesitate to necessarily. The reason why I don't have super expensive earphones is, number one, I do feel nervous about breaking them, even if they are durable. No matter what, you're going to get in a situation where you accidentally break them. If they're that expensive, it's a real bummer. I used to have a pair of eSonic SM3s, which I thought sounded fantastic with electronica, but I lost them. So, that was the last time I bought $400 earphones. The other reason why I don't necessarily like buying really expensive earphones is that most of the really expensive ones are balanced armature earphones, and I actually do not find that balanced armature earphones, at least to my ears, I don't like the sound of them over dynamic drivers, because I find that they don't have phase coherency. The different drivers, the sound arrives at different times, so when you listen to transients on some instruments, particularly string instruments, it never sounds clean. This is a problem that I've always had with every single balanced armature earphone that I've had. It never quite sounds clean. I don't have that leading edge that I really like. The other thing is that the bass response is never quite as visceral or as deep as I would like it, because with dynamic drivers, they generally have, and this is a good and bad thing, but they generally have more resonance in the lower frequencies that give a sense of echo and that give a sense of body, and I feel that that's lacking somewhat. I mean, when I heard the Trilucent OnePlus 2, I thought that sounded fantastic as a hybrid. It was really good. That was probably the best application of hybrid technology that I've heard. Perhaps you could try the new Sony XBA H3. That should have a pretty decent build to it. It's not metal, but it is seemingly decent build. It has a detachable cable. It is based similar to the 7550 kind of design. It is very bulky, but you will get a hybrid design. It should sound very good. A lot of people have been saying it's very bassy sounding on Head-Fi, but a lot of other people have been saying it's pretty amazing sounding. So you might want to check that out. I am going to try and get a pair of H3s myself pretty soon. This is a really big question from Kenneth, and I might even make a video about this. But independent music publishing is becoming more accessible than ever, with indie musicians using YouTube or SoundCloud, and big record labels are no longer an absolute necessity. Do you think this will have an adverse effect on the overall quality of music? Absolutely not. It depends on what you mean by quality. Okay, so I'm part of this process of people making content away from, like previously, how would you have even had a YouTube headphone channel? Like previously, you do a public access television where you could get up and talk about headphones. No, you'd have to do it through big publishing companies. You'd have to do it through a million layers of middlemen. I believe that because we have independent publishing platforms like SoundCloud, we have YouTube, we have Bandcamp, and if you haven't gone to Bandcamp, it's an amazing place to get independent music. you get a chance for artists who would not necessarily have been able to meet the previous barrier of entry. Maybe they have more esoteric kind of musical styles, maybe they're just a bit more random. But the whole thing about the internet is that there is always going to be, if you're doing something with merit, there is someone who's going to appreciate it. So when it comes to music, previously when there were artists who maybe had a really interesting sense of style, but no record company was going to look at them and say, I'm going to make an album out of this. You would never have been able to hear that music. That would never have been available to you. And today, because of the internet, you have access to that. You have access to the creativity of millions of people, not necessarily restricted by whatever the big company wants to publish in terms of music. So I think it makes independent music cheaper, the barrier of entry for people to put albums out cheaper. Because of the internet, it's much easier to get the resources required to learn how to master things properly. If you're an artist and you actually care about your recording quality, you can very easily find the resources necessary to work out how to do that. It's much easier now for independent artists to get direct funding from the people that listen to their music. So whereas previously people would have not been able to get money, now they can get funding directly from their listeners, and because they can do that, they can use that money to improve the quality of their recording. I do not think I see nothing but benefits for in terms of making independent record labels and in terms of kind of democratizing that entire process of music production. So no, I don't think it will have an adverse effect on overall sound, overall quality of music. Now, there's going to be a lot of stuff out there now, thanks to the internet. There's going to be a lot of stuff out there that you don't personally like. That's the one thing. It's like going on to YouTube comments or something like that. There's always going to be opinions that you're going to be exposed to that you don't like. There's people with different tastes, but on the other hand, you're going to be exposed to all kinds of things that you probably wouldn't have considered before. So, I could keep going on about this, but that's my opinion on that. But good question. So I might even do a whole video on that. It's quite an interesting topic. I'm gonna have to wrap this up very soon, but let me just try and do this as quickly as possible. George asks, first of all, great videos. Keep up the great work. Question: do you know the website sumal.com? I'm not sure you know Chinese or not, but this is a highly regarded Chinese audiophile site, and they always recommend great cans that are overlooked. Unfortunately, I cannot speak. I can speak Chinese, but I cannot read Chinese. I can't speak Mandarin. I can only speak Cantonese. So I know that China is really big in terms of audio markets nowadays, and there's a lot of stuff that's actually only being produced for the Chinese domestic market that you never hear of. There's companies like Hi-Fi Man, VSonic that started out in China producing stuff that honestly wiped the floor with the old school kind of audiophile companies. So it's a lot of interesting stuff there. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be like a first responder as far as that kind of stuff goes because I just don't have the language capability. So I keep my eyes on Hi-Fi and I rely on a lot of YouTube comments to let me know what else I should be looking at next. But yeah, no, if you are a speaker of Chinese, and as George says, Soomal, SOOMAL.com might be a good place to check out. I don't know myself, but I might have a bit of a look. Wayuden asks, what is the best sounding album you've heard in your music collection? Well, I'm just going to assume you mean best mastered. And by best mastered, I would say it's the Ghost in the Shell Innocence soundtrack by Kenji Kawai. That album is mastered amazingly. There's some amazing music on that album. I didn't really like the movie so much myself, but Ghost in the Shell Innocence has an amazing soundtrack. Well worth listening to, but maybe if that's not your thing, it's kind of a weird album. Can you tell me what's the difference between dual driver IEMs like Co-1 EH2 and ordinary IEM? And have you tried IEM? Sorry, this is William's question. IEM from Zero Audio, especially the Carbon series. Now, my general opinion on all earphones, and this is the trend, and maybe this opinion is not necessarily popular, but I feel like we set more and more complexity with earphones and they introduce more and more complexity. They introduce multiple balance sandwiches, and they introduce multi drivers and everything like that. And it's like razor blades on a razor, right? They add the extra of 3 razor blades or the 5 razor blades, etc., etc. It's something for them to say on the box, look, I have 5 drivers on this earphone, but I don't necessarily think it leads to a better output in sound. I have heard so many single driver earphones that sound absolutely fantastic. The EX1000, the VSonic GR07, the HiFiMan RE400, single balanced, like a single dynamic driver, especially micro drivers, Yamaha EPH100, JVC FXD80. Those are all the IEMs that I kept. They are such a wide range of price, but just having a single driver means that you get a cohesive sound, right? Because there's only one point of sound. And all the sound waves, most of the frequencies, should arrive at the ear at the same time because they're being produced from a single point of sound. Now, of course, there's things like driver breakup and that kind of thing, but generally speaking, a single driver is going to be more cohesive than having multiple drivers, because multiple drivers have to be arranged in such a way that you have to be able to calculate when the sound frequencies arrive at your ear at the correct time. And there will be things like phase cancellation where the sounds kind of, etc. So as you introduce more complexity, you introduce more of the price. You increase the price. You increase the size of the earphone. You make it bigger. You make it more uncomfortable. You make it heavier. I don't think that the current trend, the industry trend towards more multiple balance sandwiches and hybrid designs, I'm not particularly enthusiastic about that trend. I don't think it's the right direction. And I had the Lord, for instance, Sennheiser, they put out their $1,000 in-ear. It is a single driver. And they put a single driver because and if there's any company that I trust their engineering know-how, it's Beyerdynamic and Sennheiser. And they made the decision to go, we can get the best sound, we can get the most coherent sound out of a single driver. And that's my opinion. I've never heard any multiple balanced armature or multiple driver earphone that would necessarily convince me otherwise. So that's my opinion on multiple drivers. I just think it's over engineering. I think it's added complexity for no particular reason. But I'm not an audio engineer, so there is possible ways to make multiple drivers sound good. I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm just saying that it is redundant. I think it is unnecessary complexity. That's my opinion on it. Oh, Nathan, I can't finish this hangout without addressing Nathan Wright from Om Image. I'm actually never sure how to pronounce that, so please correct me if I say that wrong. So it's Om Image or Om Image, or you probably want to say it all together, so Homage. Nathan Wright says, I consider myself an audiophile, but because I swear by my 2005 iPod Shuffle 512 megabytes and my fake, would you rate me as Maj or Porridge as an audiophile? I would definitely rate you as Homage, Nathan. There is no way that I would say otherwise. Though I have to say, I think the 2005 iPod Shuffle was roundly considered to be one of the best players on the market. And I think it delivered a relatively low output impedance. I don't think any of the engineers had anything bad to say about that player. It's like how the original PlayStation is considered an amazing audiophile player. I can't really vouch for that myself. I haven't heard it. But yeah, no, if it works for you, it works for you. Audiophiles, yeah, I mean, I probably don't think that you expected your question to be, answered seriously, but I find that I find it very strange when people go onto forums and say, I have this opinion, but I'm not an audiophile, so, this kind of apology that people have for this. There's no such thing as an audiophile. There's no card-carrying member. Like, you don't become a card-carrying member of the audiophile community. You get a little laminated card that says, "Oh, I'm an audiophile. I like sound." Because literally that's what audiophile means. I love sound. If you like music, and you care about what goes into your ear and what you listen to, you're an audiophile or you're an enthusiast. I don't really like the term audiophile myself, but I recognize that it's probably one of the more convenient labels. I like to say audio enthusiast, but in the end, I tend to trust. Okay, so on the spectrum, there are some people who only care about the gear, and they literally just buy gear, and then they buy the best music that sounds the best album for this piece of gear, and they only listen to things that sound amazingly mastered and that kind of thing. And I think that's absolute like crap, to be honest. Like it's stupid. Like I did not go into buying headphones and being enthusiastic about it because I was necessarily only enthusiastic about the gear. And that said, I am really super excited about headphones and stuff like that and the technology. But at the end, it's the music. I listen to all kinds of music, and I'm not going to not listen to something. I'm not going to go, oh, I'm not going to listen to that because it isn't mastered properly, because it's stupid. It's just like saying I'm not gonna look at photos that have come from a camera that is lower than 5 megapixel because it's offensive to my eyes. Like it's stupid. I think it's just a stupid kind of opinion that comes from people who um I don't know. I don't know what the instinct is behind it. Then you have on the other end, and I respect these people more than the people who only listen to gear. I respect the people who go, I don't really care what I listen to, like what earphones I listen to it. I just listen to a lot of music, and you meet some people who just they have huge musical knowledge, but they're not going to spend heaps of money on audio equipment because they just can't afford it or they don't care. And I respect that. I respect that deeply because they 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 know what they want. They know what the most important thing is, and it's the music in the end. But that's sort of my opinion on that. But anyway, so that turned into a bit of rant. I'm sorry, but yeah, that probably marks the end of this hangout. Thanks for joining in, for everyone. Thanks for all your comments. Please click the like button before you leave the hangout, just so that I'm gonna probably edit this together into something a little bit more cohesive. Or maybe split this up into 2 videos, one with the unboxing section and one with the question and answer part of the thing. I'll probably split it up. But anyway, thanks for watching, and happy listening.